Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. NBA playoffs are here. That means you put down $5 and you get $150 in free plays if that team or if you're a new customer. Doesn't even matter who wins. All right, now joined by William Brad Alice. I am merely Mike Luke. Hello, William.
I thought the NBA playoffs were over.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we just hop right into the NBA playoffs? Because you and I, longtime Phoenix Suns, we're not the types that have the freshly minted Chris Paul jerseys. Gone back ways here.
No, I have a black Barkley jersey if you want to.
I have an Oliver Miller one, or a Dan Marley.
It's pretty good.
Maybe I'll wear that next time. Okay, let's talk about it first and foremost. Obviously, there's an Arizona connection right there. What do you do with DeAndre Ayton? Because, again, like he's up for a possible Supermax type contract. But is he the type of player, Brad, that you can pay that kind of money to?
I think it just depends where you're going from here. And if you're going to continue on with this core, with making tweaks, then I think you do it. Does that mean you're overpaying for him? Yes. But this is the NBA where you overpay for players, frankly. Mm-hmm. If you are going to make a series of changes and you think you can get value in a sign and trade, then maybe you do that. Right. My thought is teams are going to pay Ayton, but will they do a sign and trade where you can get anything of value for him? And I don't know if that is the case because, you didn't miss on the pick per se. Because, I mean, he's
good.
Formed about what if you told me what was he going to be, an 18-9 guy, 18-10, yeah. That's what I kind of thought he was going to be. And in this version of the NBA, I'm not sure a big man can be a transcendental player. Ayton might have been 15 years ago. Right. But in the modern game, obviously, was Luka a better player? Yeah. Is Trae Young potentially a better player? Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure you can win long-term with Trae Young. But, Ayton is at worst the third best player in that draft. And if you want to keep him, and deal, or you got to sell when selling's high. I'm going to use my football team. The Chiefs didn't want to pay Tyreek Hill what he was worth, and they got a haul for him. And if they hit on their draft picks, it's a good trade. And if they didn't, it's not. So I guess you have to see what's out there, what you can get, what you can swing. We've all heard about the rumors for Anthony Towns. I don't know if that's a good trade. But it just depends, what direction you want to go.
Our guy, Mike Baldwin, makes a great point there. Mike Baldwin, very good dude. And here's what the rub that's always bothered me a little bit about Ayton is that I can generally tell and I can gauge somebody's aggressiveness based off how many free throws they're getting. And it feels whenever I looked at Ayton and he's averaging 2.5 free throws a game, and again, we come from a different era, but that to me for a guy that is physically gifted as him, Brad, that just isn't enough.
I don't know, though, if that's a fair – it might be a flawed stat because if you watch, there are those games where Ayton dominates and he'll go 8 of 10.
Right.
And he's still not going to the line. I mean, if you're, if you're 13 of 14 or 13 of 15 and you're still not going to the line, I'm not sure what you want him doing. Are there other games where I think he absolutely probably needs to get to the line? Absolutely, yeah. But it's just kind of – it's weird. In many ways in the modern NBA, it's really hard for a traditional big man to draw fouls, as weird as that sound, because all those guys are playing off to try to help out on the driver, and those are the guys going to the line. I mean, when we were in the 90s, it was the big men who got the bulk of the free throws, and that's why if you had a good free throw shooting big man, you were in good shape. Now it's the guards and the wings who go a disproportionate amount of times than they did when we were kids. But again, they're not settling for jump shots as much. There's no mid-range jumpers. You're either shooting threes or you're going hard to the goal.
Okay. Let's talk about the transfer possibilities now for the Arizona Wildcats. Some names. F.A. Abogidi has just come out and named Arizona as one of his final 3 schools. Be breaking it down a little bit more tomorrow in further detail, but this is a nice little player if Arizona could get him, Brad. Last year, averaged 8.6 rebounds, about 6'10", 225, But where I think he's the most interesting is that he can block shots on the back end. He gives you a little bit of an athleticism presence that maybe a guy like a Ballo or a Tabellis doesn't have. So to me, if you're Arizona and you can get this guy, you feel very good about it.
Yeah, he gives you, in reality, a fourth different kind of big, because he's not the same as Ballo. He's not the same as Tabellis. He's not the same as the freshman Anderson. And that's what I kind of like about last year's team. Koloko wasn't the same as those. He's a poor man's Christian Koloko. He's obviously not the defensive player that Koloko is, but he replicates a lot of that. He may not even actually be the offensive player that Koloko is, but you don't necessarily need him to be. But yeah, I think he would be a nice pickup for Arizona, because even if they do wind up with a European big man, the odds of a European big man being a shot blocking kind of floor runner big is very slim. They're good. You would assume he's going to be more like a Tabellis type. So yeah, getting a guy like that would help. Now he has to decide, does he want to accept that role at Arizona? Does he want to return? I know Washington State return is still a slim possibility, but he's probably 14 points a game there if he wants to be, or is he going to want to be happy with 6 to 8 at Arizona, but be part of something a lot better?
Where he also fits in, though, really well, I think, is that you've got on the perimeter right now, you've got guys who, like Pelle Larsson is a capable Pelle Larsson's, I think, a capable defender. I don't know that Kirk Reese is ever going to be a strong defender. That's just, not really his thing. So if you can have guys that can really be an impediment on the back end, I think it gives you some more flexibility there. We'll talk about Dalen Terry in a second, but that's the kind of guy that you're looking for, and especially, too, with the mystery big man that everybody's been talking about. I don't know that you're planning on him coming in here and being a 2-block shot type per game guy. So this guy was pretty much unique on the open market when it comes to that, Brad.
Yeah, and I think you can mix and match as well. You can put him at center, Tabellis at the 4. If you trot out Ballo at the 4, or the 5, he can slide to the 4. And then you've got 2 capable, at least, if not good, shot blockers there. With Ballo also being able to use his wide body to keep guys out of the lane. So it gives you a lot of advantages in different ways that I think, he can bring to the table. He's a very versatile guy. And again, a guy who doesn't need to come in and try to average 20. He's not going to be unhappy if he's not getting 10, 12, 14 shots a game. Because, I hope at least that he understands what he is, and that is a defense-first guy who's going to get most of his offense by being aggressive on the boards, by getting putbacks, by being the guy who can be given the ball when the guy drives and draws the double team, as opposed to a back to the basket, put your butt down and give me the ball.
Brad, have you looked at Philip Borow-Cannon's highlights that have come out now? The kid from international kid that just committed to the U of A, committed and then just signed.
I've seen some of them, yeah.
It's very difficult to be able to say because, again, like we've talked about before, and Jody Ayler, who you said don't dismiss Jody Ayler's hooping ability, but Jody Ayler has, that's not the best talent out there. For certainly get that. But what I can tell is when a guy's 6'9", when he's dribbling the ball down the court, when he's crossing people up, when he's shooting step backs, behind the back, that to me is at least what's surprising. And I think KB Thiel just put it like that too. He said Philly B is a better ball handler. I didn't expect to see that. Where generally I think you can get fooled is where you're finishing in the rim on a 6'4" guy. But the ball handling generally doesn't lie.
No, he's got the ball handling. You look at the form on the jump shot, which looks pretty pure. You look at there's some clips of him just working out. And for at least college, I don't think it works as well for the pros. You're looking for a basic level of athleticism.
Right.
And I think, this is the one thing, and I don't do recruiting like I used to, but I used to get parents calling me all the time, whether they were local parents, whether they were parents or recruits. Hey, my kid is averaging 20 points a game. Why is he not being recruited?
Right.
Well, first thing is, what is he? If he's a 6'4" post player, he's not getting recruited. Secondly, there's a legit D1, high D1 recruit is just a different kind of athlete. And a lot of that you can see the minute we've all been there, that early game in Vegas in the B gym where we're going to see one kid on a team and you find the second kid.
Right.
The Jordan Hill story.
Right.
In many ways, who was Kirk Walters was that way.
Mm-hmm.
As mediocre.
Probably should have left Kirk Walters at the gym.
No, but as mediocre as he was at Arizona, he was a legit Pac-12 type player, and you could see that the minute you walked in the gym, he was just a little different.
Right.
And that's the thing is you look at the tape, and he just looks like an alien among the rest of those players. And I know it's Serbian D3 or whatever, Bosnian D3, but he looks different. In many ways, I say when you went out to watch Kadeem Carey at CDO, he looked different.
Mm-hmm.
Our guy, Reggie Robertson, who, again, good player, not looked different. Adam Hall looked different. I don't care what his stats was in Tucson, Arizona. You can see when a kid is a different level of athleticism. That's what he appears to be. And now whether that transfers into being a 2-point-a-game guy at Arizona or a 20-point-a-game, I have no idea.
Right.
But the fact is, he doesn't look like that far of a reach. Could he be? Yeah. But he looks like he belongs at least on this level.
I expected when I was looking at his highlights, I expected to see some Zapruder film type stuff where you're looking at a guy and you're like, you can't really tell. But now I'm a little intrigued by what the possibilities are right there. Also, you don't really know because he hasn't played at the highest level, obviously. So he's one of those kids that the sooner the better he gets in here is, I think, better for him. All right, I want to talk to you about Courtney Ramey here in a second. But first, have I told you about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, William?
You've mentioned it once or twice.
All right, let me tell you again because you might have forgotten. Code word PHNX. You put in $5. I've been telling you all from day one the Miami Heat are going to win the NBA title. They're one of the final four teams. You could say Mike Luke's an idiot. I don't trust anything he says. I'm going to go against Mike Luke. Certainly your choice right there. But I would 100% recommend either way doing that on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Code word PHNX. 21 and up, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Okay, a guy that has certainly become a name that a lot of people are keeping an eye on right now is Courtney Ramey, Texas combo guard who declared for the draft, but it does look like he's going to withdraw. It sounds like Arizona, West Virginia are the two schools he's looking at. A lot of people look at the stats, and he's averaging 10 points per game, 11 points per game. But, oh, by the way, our good friend Rudy Bastillo says Mike Luke's an idiot. Rudy, I appreciate you. 1290 days. But Ramey, though, is intriguing because if you watch the Houston game, William, if you watched, the TCU game, which I know you did, Arizona's one thing is that they had a very difficult time containing dribble penetration. And I think you made the point, too. While Justin Kier is solid, Justin Kier was not a dynamic athlete. He was not a great, lateral movement type guy. Courtney Ramey is a very good defender. He can move. He was considered one of the best perimeter defenders in the Big 12. He probably doesn't start if he comes here, but there's certainly a unique role for him, as there would be F.A. Abigidi, because there's not really anybody else on the roster like him.
No, and again, with him, I think the big decision comes down to, does he want to accept a role where you're still going to play a lot at Arizona, where you might have a legit chance of a Final Four, where even by just being in the presence of some of these guys, you're going to help your draft stock.
Right.
Because assuming Dallin Terry comes back, assuming, Tabellis improves, assuming some of these young guys improve, NBA scouts are watching your games.
Right.
But if you go to West Virginia, and I know the West Virginia fans seem to be all over the place about this guy, you're probably going to start on a team that is going through a massive overhaul and may or may not be good. And I have no idea. It's hard to bet against Bob Huggins, but they were awful last year.
Right.
Arizona's going to be good to great this year, depending, and you could be a key piece of that. So do you want to come in, and you might be in the Justin Kier role? And frankly, if Justin Kier was a better athlete, no offense to Justin Kier, he'd be on draft boards, even with his limited play, because, again, good coaching, good competition, and, the thing people forget, NBA scouts don't really care about your statistics. They want to see how you project. And the problem is Justin Kier doesn't project as an NBA-type player. just like Raleigh Alkins didn't project as an NBA type player, just as a lot of these guys. There's a certain type, which is ironic because Dallin Terry did not have great numbers but projects as an NBA type player, which is why conceivably he could stay in the draft, even though he averaged 8 points a game last year.
Right.
So that's what he has to decide. Do you want to be the bigger fish with maybe less chance to improve, or do you want to come to Arizona, accept a role, but maybe be a guy who can play his way into the draft, even as a backup by getting on that stage in March as well? So that's a big decision for him, but one that I think is an interesting one that could be a difficult decision because, again, a lot of kids just want to score, and I don't blame them. The NBA is not a guarantee, but maybe being a starter at West Virginia is.
One thing, though, that I think we found about Gonzaga and what we've also found now a little bit about Arizona is I don't think that you ever worry per se about scoring. I think the things that you worry about, what really could be your Achilles heel, is what are you going to be able to do defensively against really physical teams? You saw that again, the Muss Bus. When Gonzaga ran into the Muss Bus, it got flattened because you had a bunch of physical athletes out there. Arizona, kind of the same way against Houston. So I'd like to see, and that's why maybe I'm so intrigued by Abogidi and why Courtney Ramey, I think, could fit in really nicely here because they bring a little bit more of that quick toughness that if you look on last year's roster, there were some guys, but again, you lost some of them. And on top of that, you need to be able to replace that. So I think that's where both those guys would become at least fascinating for me, William.
And the other thing with Ramey is, while we assume certain guys are going to move into certain positions, if Ramey's better, he's going to play over Kriisa. No offense to Kirk Kriisa. If he's better, he'll jump Pelle Larsson in the pecking order. There's no guarantee Dallin Terry's back. And if so, then his role would get much bigger because Ball and Larsson are going to play more at the 3. So there's a lot of questions to still be answered for a team that has a lot of answers already. It's kind of strange. Okay.
Now, let's just look at the Dallin Terry. It does sound like they're probably, because he wasn't invited to the 5-on-5 part of the combine. So therefore, as Kevin Woodman would like to say, the tryouts.
Was he not invited, or did he choose not to participate?
He's not participating in the 5-on-5 part.
I've seen conflicting reports whether that was his decision or someone else's.
Either way, I'll take it, though, because I think in a 5-on-5 setting, he really flourishes because you can see a lot of what he can do. So either way, Dallin, if this was your decision, please stay out. I think you're making the right call there. A lot of this, though, does get alleviated, though, obviously, if Terry does come back, because, I mean, look at it. You're bringing back a 6'7" jack of all trades that can make up for a lot of stuff. Then, by the way, if you've got an Abogidi, if you've got a Courtney Ramey, all of a sudden you've got a fairly athletic lineup there that, while certainly doesn't have the scoring punch that maybe last year's did, it can certainly match up with certain teams out there. So,
yeah, that's the thing with Ramey, with Terry, with the Washington State big man whose name I don't want to butcher because then
F.A. Abogidi.
And with a few other options is it transforms Arizona. Right now, Arizona is a very good basketball team if no one else joins this roster, but they're not nearly as athletic as they were.
Right.
In many ways, they're going to more resemble a good mid-major. Even some of the lesser teams in the Pac-12, they're just more talented. Right. But if you trot out a starting lineup, let's say, of Tubelis, Ballo, Ball, Larsson, and Kirk Kriisa, you're going to win 20-something games.
Right.
You're going to compete favorably in the Pac-12, especially with some of the hits that UCLA has taken in the past few weeks. But you don't have that extra gear you might be able to get to, which they did last year. You're maybe stuck in 4th gear. There's no 5th gear because you're not quite as athletic.
Right.
Conversely, you add Dallin Terry, who is at the very least wildly athletic. You add these even one of these other pieces, and you suddenly that potential to be that team that can just beat you now in a third way, whether it's defense, offense, or just run you off the floor, becomes an issue. And again, it also helps your depth, which the poster down there said. But that depth can be acquired elsewhere as well. But whether you can get the quality athletic depth of these 3 guys remains to be seen, because there's other options out there. They're just not quite as good of options maybe as these 3 guys.
Okay, switching over to football, and again, I know I always love the viewer numbers; they go down immediately. So,
Oh, we're not
disclaimer,
talking softball regional.
disclaimer right there. All right, Brad. But I did want to talk a little bit of football with you. What people are asking? I've had a couple people ask this to me, and I asked Glenn Parker the other day, and he says to me, or I asked him, I said, "What do you need to see out of the U of A defense this coming year?" And Brad, that's the question that I wanted to ask you too. Because again, I'm not looking for a repeat of the 85 Bears, but what will progress look like for Brad Alice?
You know, this is going to sound crazy. I think the defense was okay last year.
I did too.
It wasn't good, but it was good enough that if you had a competent offense, you would have won more games.
Right.
I mean, it was better than most of the defenses Rich Rod trotted out there.
Right.
And I know we're going to have a different scheme. We're going to have a different coordinator. But they also, I think, have the potential to be a better defense. You look at the transfers they brought in, the D lineman from UCLA, the linebacker from / Russian from USC,
right?
The continued evolution and development of some of these guys. Again, if you can be middle of the pack, 6th to 8th in the league, that's a huge improvement.
Right.
What I really just want to see is I don't want to see a glaring. Last year, there were some times when the safeties just looked awful. Like they didn't belong playing for Arizona Christian, much less a Pac-12 school. There were times when they looked very thin in the middle when there were some of those games with the injuries. I just want to see them look better.
Right.
But numbers wise, in the Pac-12, if you can consistently hold teams to the mid 30s, you're going to win a lot of games. The under 50 is not that ridiculous. So yeah, I just want to see them be a little bit better than last year. But the side of the ball, I really need to see improvements on his offense, because the offense at times, most of last year, just was not very good. And again, I'm hoping that is quarterback play and not coaching, but we'll see.
Now, offensively, as Rudy said, as you put holding teams under 50, I know that we're actually, we're aiming big here, and hopefully that works out. Offensively, though, last year, we can be honest, last year was an absolute train wreck as well. I would imagine whoever the quarterback is, at least that you have somebody competent on there at this point there, William.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, if it is Delara, which I expect, if it is Fafita, or even if it's McLeod, I think you've got 3 guys who either have shown the ability to be capable starters in the Pac-12 or who has shown the ability in Fafita's case. Again, if you're dipping down to Cruz or Plummer because of injury or God forbid something else, then yes, I'm very worried.
Right.
But those 3, McLeod showed me enough in the games he played in.
I'm fine with McLeod as a backup.
Yeah, and if he had to be your spot starter, you take out 2 picks against Oregon, he played a pretty darn good game. Now, some of those picks were atrocious. He was really good against UCLA till he got hurt. I can't say the same about the other 2 kids. But I expect it to be Delara, and I would not be surprised if Fafita doesn't get some run at times. But, if Delara can be 90% of the guy he was at Washington State last year, and I'm taking off some because of just my worries about the line, I think this can be a capable offense. Again, assuming that most of the issues we saw with play calling, with play execution, were more on the quarterback not reading the right play, not checking into the right things, than it was with Jedd Fisch. And even with Jedd Fisch calling the plays, there's this belief out here that that what we saw against NAU is the ceiling for the program. Jedd Fisch, if some of those play calling were his fault, can grow as a play caller. Will he? I don't know. But I see this thing. Well, the jet sweep to the short side. Well, there's actually some reasons you do that, and it's not to gain yardage. It's actually to get the cornerback and the safeties and the linebackers to be in different places next time you run a different play. There's some very interesting articles I read, because I used to yell at it too. Like, why are you running that? Well, there's some reasons to do that. So maybe, again, if you believe that he was trying to play chess with with checker pieces, then maybe there's some confidence. On the other hand, again, maybe it was just bad play calling.
There's not a lot of times that we talk U of A baseball on the show, but I will say that I've become a little intrigued by this team. A lot of people had strong opinions about Chip Hale. Let's talk about this team so far. This is essentially the team that can lose to Arizona Christian in baseball, but then they can beat the number 1 ranked team in the nation 2 out of 3 times at home. Just from a casual observer perspective, William, what have you thought of this first year of the Chip Hale regime?
To me, I've never been overly concerned about Chip Hale as the on-the-field guy. I know some people didn't like what he did at the major league level, but
it's apples and oranges.
Chip Hale knows baseball.
Right.
My bigger concern is, can he recruit at a high level? And again, I don't know enough about baseball recruiting to know if these guys he's getting are good. They're rated pretty well. And I'm a little biased because actually a guy I play hockey against, son, just got a scholarship, so he's coming to Arizona as a pitcher. So can he get the right guys? And then can he do all the things that a college baseball coach has to do? Be a father figure, keep guys out of trouble, keep guys on track to graduate, juggle 11.7 scholarships, go into a weekend series with 3 healthy pitchers because, I don't know. I was there actually Friday night for the game where they were down and then they got up and then they got down and, so we'll see. I think it's something where we'll have to look 2 or 3 years from now to see how Chip Hale is. That midseason swoon worries me a little bit, but this wasn't ever going to be a 1-year resume. I think it's way too early to jettison from Caitlin Lowe just because Arizona dipped this year because we all knew it was going to be a rebuilding job. That being said, yeah, there were some concerns out there when baseball does lose 2 of 3 to Grand Canyon.
Correct.
And the women's team, despite getting into the tournament, I think finished last in the Pac-12. So yeah, those are concerns, but I think it's way too early. Like it was way too early to make a pass judgment on Jedd Fisch. The good news is I think we can give Tommy Lloyd a thumbs up, and as long as he continues to recruit at a decent level, it will always be thumbs up on Tommy Lloyd.
All right. Before we sign off here again, DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. Put in $5. You get $150 on these games right here, but you got to be a new customer. Again, if you think I'm an idiot, go against the Miami Heat tonight. If you think I'm smart, go with the Celtics, or if you go with the Celtics. But it doesn't really matter because if you're a new customer, you get all that free money right there. All right, William. Tuesdays with William's always a big thing. See you back here next Tuesday?
Yeah, unless you replace me with Maury.
I will not. Oh,
that was a vague reference. Sorry.
I don't. You're gonna have to explain that one.
Mike Lupica, the sports writer for the Detroit Free Press, wrote a book called Tuesdays with Maury, where he went and interviewed his
Maury Povich,
dying mentor, who was his editor, and wrote a book, and it was a bestseller. And that's why we don't see Mike Lupica write much sports anymore because now he's a motivational writer.
All right. Well, either way,
basically interviewing an old guy.
William, you are not an old guy. William, anybody that can play hockey and anybody that can coach baseball is still young at heart.
Hey, don't forget the volleyball team. They're 5-2.
There we go, right there. Man of all seasons. He's Brad Allis. I'm Mike Luke. Thanks so much. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.